I was left out of the will because I wasn't their real daughter. They didn't say my name, not in the obituary, not in the funeral announcement, not even in the list of surviving children. It was a Tuesday morning when the envelope arrived. No return address, just my name, Claire Morgan, scrawled in a precise, almost surgical hand across the front, the kind of handwriting that used to appear on birthday cards and permission slips, before it stopped showing up anywhere at all. I almost tossed it with the rest of the junk mail, but something, maybe instinct, maybe habit, told me to stop. The paper inside was thick, expensive, formal, and the words printed across the top made my pulse freeze. You are invited to the memorial service for Douglas Henry Morgan, my father, dead, and I hadn't known. No one called, no one emailed, no one even sent a message. The service had already happened. 3 days ago in Charleston. I hadn't been invited, I hadn't been told, I hadn't even been acknowledged. I stood there in the kitchen, the envelope in one hand, the silence of my small rental pressing in on all sides. I wanted to feel something. Anger, sadness, guilt. But all I felt was distance. Like someone had unplugged a cord between me and the rest of the world and left me watching through the static. Later that day, I called the lawyer listed at the bottom of the letter, Gerald Adams, my father's longtime estate attorney. I gave my name. I asked if I was mentioned. There was a long pause, then a careful voice. Miss Morgan. The estate was transferred in full to Evelyn Morgan and her son Nathan. I believe the will was amended several years ago. There's no mention of you in the current documentation. He hesitated. I assumed you were aware. I wasn't. Not of the will, not of the funeral, and certainly not of the fact that, behind closed doors and without a word, they'd decided I wasn't really his daughter at all. Just like that, I was cut out. Not just from his estate, but from his story. I wasn't just cut from the will. I was cut from the story. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, its slow rotation slicing the dark into even darker pieces. My mind circled just as slowly, just as aimlessly, around the same question. Was any of it ever real? Not the late-night hot chocolates after thunderstorms. Not the bedtime stories he used to read in the exact voice he thought I liked. Not the little library he built in the attic, just for me. A room no one else in the family was allowed to enter. He once said, "You're the quiet one, like your mother, but quiet doesn't mean invisible." But maybe it did, because now every one of those memories felt like furniture in a house I'd been evicted from. They still existed, but I wasn't welcome inside anymore. I thought of that drawing I made when I was 6, a crooked little sketch of our family, taped to his office door for years. I used to think that meant something, that love left clues, that if you looked closely, you'd find proof that you belonged. Now I wasn't so sure. Around noon the next day, my phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize. Local, Charleston. I hesitated, then picked up. "Claire?" a soft voice asked. "This is Aunt Miriam. I just wanted to say I'm sorry about everything. Your father, he made decisions, but your mother loved you, fiercely. That's why she never told you. She didn't want you to feel less." There was a pause. No apology, just the awkward kindness of someone who's not used to stepping out of silence. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I didn't ask for more. I didn't need to, because part of me already knew. Somewhere deep down, in the place you keep locked even from yourself, that this had always been coming. They just finally put it in writing. They didn't erase me all at once. They did it slowly, until there was nothing left to cross out. The unraveling didn't happen overnight. It started the year my mother died. I was 14. One morning she was there, packing my lunch, humming off key to Patsy Cline. By evening, she was gone. A ruptured aneurysm. No warning, no time, just silence, and casseroles from neighbors, and a father who didn't know where to put his grief. At first, he kept me close, Too close. He hovered like he didn't trust himself to breathe unless I was in the room. But grief makes people strange. It folds them inward. By the time Evelyn moved in, barely a year later, I had already learned how to disappear without leaving. She was gracious at first, smiled with her teeth, brought me hair clips and herbal tea, but she never said my name unless there were people watching. Behind closed doors, it was always her, and as in, she's not adjusting well. Or, she should be more grateful. The house started changing. My mother's piano was moved to the garage. The little attic library was cleared out and turned into a guest room. Photos of me vanished, replaced by shots of Evelyn's son, Nathan. I hadn't even met him yet. By the time Nathan moved in, the narrative had shifted. He called my dad sir, got straight A's, played varsity tennis. And I, though, didn't. I wasn't rebellious. I was just quiet, invisible. One night when I was 19, Evelyn caught me slipping $20 into an envelope for a friend who couldn't afford her textbooks. "This is why you'll never get ahead," she snapped. "Always giving away what isn't yours." That was the night I left. No yelling, no goodbye, just a suitcase, a bus ticket, and a folded note I left on the kitchen counter that read, "Don't worry, you don't have to keep pretending I belong here." He never called, and I never looked back, until now. I didn't come to start a fight, I came to see what was left. The Morgan house looked exactly the same. White columns, red brick, ivy creeping up the porch rails like it never stopped growing, even after everything else had. But as I stood at the edge of the driveway, suitcase in hand, it felt smaller, colder. Evelyn opened the door before I could knock. She didn't smile, didn't pretend. "Claire?" A nod, no hug, no, "I'm sorry." Just the kind of greeting you give someone you thought you'd buried. Inside, the house was spotless, museum perfect, but something about it felt off. Too still, like a stage set between acts. The hallway walls used to be lined with photos, birthdays, camping trips, a picture of me missing 3 front teeth, beaming like a fool. They were gone. Now, it was all Nathan. Nathan at graduation. Nathan on a yacht. Nathan and Evelyn at some gala, both dressed in black and gold. I said nothing. We moved through the house like strangers. Evelyn poured herself coffee. She didn't offer me any. "You can stay one night if you want," she said, tapping her mug against the countertop. "But this isn't your home anymore. I think you know that." Before I could answer, someone else walked in. A woman I didn't recognize. Mid-30s, polished, polite. She glanced at me, then leaned toward Evelyn and asked, soft but not soft enough, "Is that the adopted one?" The words didn't land. They split, like ice cracking across a frozen pond, sharp, final. I turned to leave. I wasn't going to break in front of her, but then Helen, the housekeeper, appeared at the end of the hallway, holding a thin manila folder. She didn't say anything, just slipped it into my hand with a nod and whispered, "Your mother told me to keep this safe, for when the time came." Then she turned and walked away. They thought the truth had been buried with her, but it was right there, sealed in her handwriting. I sat in the old sunroom, the manila folder in my lap, untouched. The room still smelled faintly of lemon polish and old pages, like time had layered itself into the wood. I used to read here, curled in the window seat while Mom played piano in the next room. Before Evelyn, before silence. I took a breath, then opened the folder. Inside were 3 things. The first, a notarized adoption certificate, signed and stamped in the year I was born, legal, formal, no ambiguity. The second, a letter, yellowing slightly at the edges, sealed in an envelope with a name written in cursive I hadn't seen since childhood. Claire. My fingers shook as I broke the seal. "My darling girl," it began. "If you're reading this, then the truth has found you. And I'm sorry I couldn't be the one to say it out loud, but I needed you to know your father and I chose you, not by accident, not out of pity, but because from the moment we saw you, We knew you were ours. I didn't realize I was crying until a tear hit the page. You were never a secret, not to us. But I feared what others would say. I feared the kind of cruelty that turns truth into a weapon. That's why we never told you. But I wrote this so if they ever tried to erase you, you'd have something they couldn't deny. You belong. You always have. The last page was a handwritten note from my father, dated nearly 15 years ago. Short, stark, but real. Claire is our legal and rightful daughter. If anything happens, she is to be treated as such. No exceptions. I read it twice. Then again. It wasn't just a letter. It was proof. Not of blood, but of bond, of choice, of intention. And for the first time in weeks, maybe years, I felt steady. They could erase photos, rewrite stories, but they couldn't rewrite this. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth, with a witness. I didn't storm out of the house. I walked. Folder in hand, spine straight, breath calm, like I had nothing to prove and everything to reclaim. Back at the hotel, I laid each document out on the bed. The adoption certificate, my mother's letter, the handwritten note from my father. 3 pieces of a life they'd tried to delete. For a moment, I considered calling a lawyer. Gerald Adams still handled the estate. The paperwork was solid, legal. I had every right to challenge the will, freeze the assets, drag Evelyn into court. But the thought didn't satisfy me. Not the way it should have. This wasn't about money or ownership. It was about story. About not being the invisible chapter anymore. And then I remembered the invitation on the fridge at the hotel. One I'd almost ignored. The Morgan Family Foundation's annual Legacy Gala. Tomorrow night. Formal attire, open to the public. With a segment dedicated to honoring Douglas Morgan's impact on family and community. I smiled, slow and steady. Let's see how the legacy holds up against the truth. I called Gerald that evening, told him what I'd found, and asked calmly if he would be attending the gala. There was a pause, then a quiet answer. Yes, Miss Morgan, I'll be there. She gave a speech about legacy. I brought the proof they buried. The ballroom at the Charleston Hotel glittered with intention. Gold-trimmed walls, crystal chandeliers, tables named after virtues, integrity, tradition, legacy. Everyone dressed like grief had an RSVP. The air hummed with old money and polished secrets. I didn't belong, and I didn't pretend to. I stood near the back as Evelyn took the stage. She wore black satin, pearls, and a microphone smile. Douglas Morgan believed in family, in heritage, in leaving behind something worth carrying forward. The room applauded, cameras flashed. A young man at my table whispered, "That's his wife, right? Classy lady." I didn't answer. We built this foundation to honor that vision. Evelyn continued, her voice smooth. And tonight, we celebrate the family who carries it on. That was my cue. I stepped forward, not rushed, not angry, just steady. The room didn't react right away. I wasn't dramatic enough to cause alarm. But when I reached the foot of the stage and took the microphone from the MC, gasps rippled like wind through wheat. I looked straight at Evelyn, then at the crowd. "My name is Claire Morgan," I said. "And I have something to add to this legacy." I opened the folder, held up the first page. This is my adoption certificate, signed, notarized, legal since the year I was born. The second page. This is a letter from my mother. She wrote it in case the truth ever got lost. I read the first few lines aloud. The room stilled. Flatware stopped clinking. Someone coughed, then nothing. And then, the last page. This is a written statement from Douglas Morgan, my father, declaring me his legal and rightful daughter. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I just let the silence fall. Behind me, someone stood. Gerald. I can confirm all documentation is authentic and admissible. Evelyn didn't move. Her smile cracked, but didn't fall. Yet, she built a throne out of silence. I pulled one document, and the whole thing collapsed. Evelyn didn't speak, not when Gerald stepped beside me, not when the projector behind us lit up with scanned copies of each document, not when a rustle of whispers broke across the ballroom like dry leaves in wind. She just stood there, frozen. As counsel to the Morgan estate, Gerald said calmly, I confirm these documents were submitted to me yesterday, verified, witnessed, and legally binding. A member of the gala board, an older woman in a navy suit, rose from her seat. Why were we never informed about Miss Claire Morgan's status as heir? No one answered. Not yet. From the back, someone muttered, This is a mess. Another. How did they keep this hidden? Evelyn finally found her voice. This is not the time or place. No, the board woman cut in. This is exactly the place. Nathan stood near the edge of the room, arms folded. He wasn't looking at me. He was watching his mother, waiting for her to fix it. She couldn't. Effective immediately, the board woman continued, we're suspending Evelyn Morgan and Nathan Morgan from all leadership roles within the foundation, pending formal review. There it was, the shift. The silence wasn't on my side anymore. It belonged to them. Nathan's jaw clenched. This isn't over, he snapped. For you, maybe, I said. For me, it's finally begun. He stormed out. Evelyn lingered one beat longer, long enough to meet my eyes, but she didn't speak, because she knew. Words wouldn't survive this kind of truth. I stepped down from the stage, not to applause, not to cheers, but to space, to air that felt clear for the first time in years. They lost power, I found peace. I didn't go to the after-party, didn't stay for the wine, the whispered apologies, the cautious glances from people who suddenly remembered I had a name. I just walked, out the doors, into the night air, folder still tucked under my arm like a second heartbeat. Back at the hotel, there was a letter waiting at the front desk. Plain envelope, no return address. My name written in the same shaky script I remembered from old birthday cards. Gerald. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Claire, the day your mother handed me that folder, she said one thing. They'll try to erase her, make sure she has something that speaks louder. You just did. She'd be proud. G.A. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding the note like it might dissolve if I breathed too hard. There were no fireworks, no sudden swell of triumph, just quiet, the kind that settles in after a storm, not destruction, just the absence of weight. And in that stillness, I finally let go of the need to be seen by them. Because my mother saw me. My father, in the end, saw me. And now, so did I. They tried to erase my name. I built something that would outlive theirs. 3 months later, the reading room opened, a small space tucked inside the new wing of the Charleston Public Library. Nothing grand, no ribbon cutting, no press. But on the far wall, there was a plaque. Bronze, simple, quiet, in memory of Margaret Morgan, who believed every child deserved to be chosen. I stood alone in that room the morning they installed it. Sunlight slanted across the polished floor. Rows of donated books lined the shelves. It smelled like hope and wood polish, like every library I ever felt safe in. Claire Morgan, adopted, forgotten, remembered, finally, by the one who mattered most. That afternoon, I wasn't alone for long. A girl wandered in, maybe 10, maybe 11. Dark hair, nervous hands, a sketchpad tucked under her arm. She sat at the table near the window, glanced at the plaque, then at me. Are you the lady who made this room? I smiled. Sort of. I like it, she said, then hesitated. Do you think I could write a story here? One that people might read someday? I nodded. I think that's exactly what this room is for. She opened her notebook, I walked to the doorway, then paused to look back. The light touched her shoulders, the plaque behind her, my mother's words shining just enough to be seen, but not loud enough to demand it. Not every legacy needs noise. Some are built in the quiet and held by those who choose to stay. Have you ever been quietly erased from your own family's story? I was. It doesn't always happen loudly. Sometimes it starts with a missing name, a skipped invitation, a silence that stretches for years. But the truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to survive. If this story echoes something in you, share it below. Or just leave anything you want. For the silence you once carried. You were never invisible. Not here.